seed. You know, one of the biggest misconceptions people have about boundaries is that they're a form of rejection, that saying no means pushing someone away. But in truth, boundaries are the ultimate expression of self-worth. They say, I know what I bring to the table, and I'm not afraid to walk away from what doesn't honor that. When a woman lives from that place, it doesn't make her cold or distant. It makes her magnetic, because confidence, not compliance, is what truly captivates a man. Men don't fall for women who bend to every expectation. They fall for women who know how to hold their ground with grace. When a woman sets a boundary, she's not trying to test him. She's revealing how she treats herself. She's showing that her time, attention, and energy have value. And the truth is, people only value what costs them something. If you give away all of yourself for free, your emotions, your availability, your validation, you rob someone of the opportunity to rise, to meet your standards. Think about it. When something is easily accessible, it loses its sense of meaning. The same principle applies in relationships. A man respects a woman who respects herself enough to have standards. Seat. And when he sees that she's not afraid to walk away from behavior that doesn't align with her values, it tells him she's not looking for attention. She's looking for alignment. That difference changes everything. Boundaries don't create distance. They define the quality of connection. They tell him, if you want access to me, show up as your best self. It's not about punishing him. It's about protecting your peace. When you make it clear that you're not available for inconsistency, dishonesty, or emotional laziness, you're not being high maintenance. You're being high value. You're showing that you'd rather be alone than disrespected. And ironically, that's what makes the right man want to stay. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't chase love. She attracts it. She doesn't beg for effort. She inspires it. When she says no to something that feels off, she's saying yes to her self-respect. And that kind of energy changes the entire dynamic between her and a man. It's not about ego, it's about authenticity. Men feel that difference immediately. They can sense when a woman is coming from fear versus when she's coming from grounded self-respect. And here's the beautiful paradox: boundaries don't limify it. They create the conditions where real intimacy can flourish. Because when you know where you end and someone else begins, you're no longer losing yourself to please them. You're showing up whole, not half. And two whole people create far stronger love than two people clinging to each other out of insecurity. So if you've ever felt guilty for having boundaries, remember this. Your no isn't rejection. It's redirection. It's you guiding someone toward how you deserve to be treated. Seat. And if he's the right man, he won't be intimidated by your standards. He'll be inspired by them. Because true attraction doesn't come from how much you give. It comes from how deeply you value yourself while giving. And when you start living that truth, you'll realize the most powerful way to draw love closer is to stop chasing approval and start protecting your worth. When a woman sets boundaries, she's not just saying, here's what I won't tolerate. She's also saying, here's what I'm ready to build. Boundaries are not walls, seat. They're frameworks. They don't close people out. They help you recognize who truly deserves to come in. And what men often find deeply attractive, even if they don't consciously understand it, is a woman whose boundaries come from clarity, not control. A woman who knows what she stands for doesn't need to manipulate a man's attention. Her grounded energy naturally draws it. You see, when you know who you are, you stop trying to prove it. That's what makes boundaries powerful. They're an extension of self-awareness. A woman who is clear on her needs doesn't seek permission to express them. She communicates them with calm conviction. And that energy doesn't come from trying to be hard to get. It comes from understanding that your peace is precious, your energy is finite, and your heart deserves reciprocity. Here's the truth: when a man senses that he feels both challenged and inspired, not in a game-playing way, but in a way that brings out the best version of him. A woman with healthy boundaries doesn't demand a man to rise up. Her presence naturally encourages him to. Because she's not living in reaction, she's living in intention. And intention is magnetic. Most people, without realizing it, create boundaries from fear of being hurt, fear of losing control, fear of being abandoned. But real boundaries are not reactive, they're reflective. They don't say, if I'm afraid of what might happen. They say, if I'm certain of what I deserve. That distinction is everything. A woman rooted in her worth doesn't use her boundaries to push someone away. She uses them to stay true to herself, no matter what happens. And that self-trust is what men deeply respond to. It's what makes them see her as not just desirable, but dependable. Not because she's always available, but because she's emotionally consistent. She doesn't crumble when he pulls back. She doesn't chase when things get quiet, and she doesn't question her value when things feel uncertain. She simply observes, stays grounded, and allows space for truth to reveal itself. That's confidence, not arrogance. And it's one of the most irresistible traits a person can have. The irony is, setting boundaries doesn't scare the right man. It filters him. It helps him see that your love isn't something he can take for granted. It invites him show up with respect, effort, and clarity. When he realizes that you hold yourself accountable to your standards, it signals that you'll hold the relationship to a higher level of integrity too. Boundaries, in the end, don't just teach people how to treat you. They teach you how to honor yourself. Every no you say to chaos, confusion, and inconsistency is an eyes to peace, confidence, and connection. And when a woman begins to live that truth, she no longer fears losing love. She knows that what's meant for her will never require her to shrink, settle, or sacrifice her self-respect. So remember this: the moment you stop begging for clarity and start creating it through your boundaries, you become the kind of woman no man wants to lose. Because your presence feels like peace, and your strength reminds him what real love is supposed to look like. When a woman sets boundaries, something subtle yet powerful shifts in the dynamic. She teaches a man that attraction without respect is empty. You see, many people confuse chemistry with connection. Chemistry is easy, it's instinctive, often uncontrollable. But connection is earned. It's built through mutual respect, effort, and emotional consistency. And when a woman holds her boundaries, she becomes a mirror that reflects whether a man is capable of more than just desire, whether he can meet her emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Here's what most people miss: boundaries create clarity. They strip away the illusions that often cloud attraction. Without boundaries, relationships become playgrounds for confusion. One person gives endlessly, the other takes unconsciously, and soon the balance is gone. Seat. But when you draw the line with love and firmness, you're not creating distance, you're creating definition. You're saying, if this is going to work, it needs to exist within the space of mutual value. And that, ironically, draws the right kind of person closer. Men, the ones who are emotionally aware and ready. Don't fall for women who make themselves smaller to fit their comfort zone. They fall for women who hold space for truth. because those women make them feel safe. Safe to show up, safe to be real, safe to be accountable. Boundaries don't just protect your peace, they create emotional safety for both people involved. When you know where someone stands, you can finally stand confidently beside them. A woman without boundaries often finds herself giving too much. Her time, her energy, her emotional labor, hoping that her generosity will earn love. That must be earned through overextension isn't love, it's validation, seeking disguised as devotion. When she reclaims her boundaries, she's not rejecting love, she's redefining it. She's saying, I want love that's mutual, not manipulative. Love that flows, not one that drains. That declaration changes everything about how a man sees her. What's remarkable is that boundaries don't just reveal who respects you. They also expose who never did. Some men will push back when they meet a woman with standards, not because she's wrong for having them, but because they've never been held accountable to that level of respect. But a mature man, one grounded in his own worth, will rise to meet it. He won't see her boundaries as a challenge to his ego. He'll see them as an invitation to grow. And here's the deeper truth. When you set boundaries, you're not just managing others, you're mastering yourself. You're saying, my emotions no longer control my actions. My self-worth no longer depends on your approval. That's emotional intelligence. That's power in its most graceful form. And men, whether they articulate it or not, are drawn to that level of self-possession. When a man realizes he can't manipulate her silence, can't buy her compliance with attention, and can't sway her truth with charm, that's when admiration begins to form. He starts seeing her not as a fleeting thrill, but as a woman of depth. Someone whose presence commands intention, seat. So the next time you're afraid that your boundaries will push someone away, remember this, they won't push away the right one. They'll only push away the ones who were never meant to stay. Because in love, as in life, it's not your openness that earns you respect. It's your ability to close the door on what doesn't honor you. When a woman sets boundaries, something transformative happens, not just in how others treat her, but in how she begins to see herself. Boundaries aren't walls. They are expressions of self-respect. They are quiet declarations that say, I know my worth, seat, and I'm willing to protect it. And that level of self-awareness is magnetic. It's not about shutting people out. It's about inviting in only those who are capable of meeting you where you truly are. When a man encounters a woman with real boundaries, seat, he feels something different. It's not just attraction, it's admiration. Because whether he admits it or not, he senses that she's not desperate for validation. She doesn't bend to attention, and she doesn't mistake interest for investment. She's calm in her own space. That calmness, that emotional independence, becomes the foundation of her power. And for a man who's truly ready for something meaningful that's intoxicating, but it's deeper than attraction. Psychologically, humans are drawn to what challenges them to grow. When you establish boundaries, you introduce a kind of tension, the good kind. It's the kind that says, if you want to be part of my world, it requires effort, honesty, and respect. That energy invites a man to rise, to step into maturity. It filters out passivity and invites intention. And that's why men fall harder for women who are not easily swayed. Because she doesn't just respond to words, she responds to action. So many women fear that setting boundaries will make them seem cold or difficult. But the truth is, a boundary is not rejection, it's redirection. It tells someone, if you want to connect with me, this is the way. It's not about punishment, it's about preservation. And what you're preserving is your emotional energies, your self-esteem, your time. Because without those, you have nothing left to give authentically. There's a reason boundaries are deeply attractive to strong men. They communicate self-control. And self-control in psychology is one of the most respected traits in both men and women. It shows emotional maturity. It says, I can desire you, but I don't need to lose myself to keep you. That's the kind of energy that commands presence. It's not loud, it's not boastful. It's steady, centered, and self-possessed. And for men who have spent years surrounded by people who chase them, flatter them, or adapt to them, meeting a woman who doesn't play that game is unforgettable. Because she doesn't chase, she chooses. She doesn't demand, she expects. And in that shift of energy, she reminds him of something powerful. Love is not earned through effort alone, it's sustained through respect. Boundaries teach men how to treat you, but more importantly, they remind you how to treat yourself. When you set them consistently, you no longer fall for potential, you respond to patterns. You no longer tolerate confusion, you require clarity. And that shift, that quiet confidence, seat, changes everything about how love shows up in your life. Because at the end of the day, attraction might bring someone to you, but boundaries determine who stays. And when you finally understand that truth, you stop chasing connection and start attracting relationships that don't ask you to compromise your peace just to feel wanted. One of the most misunderstood ideas in modern dating is that setting boundaries will scare someone away. People often think, if I say no, he'll lose interest. Or if I stand up for what I need, I'll come across as demanding. But here's the truth. Boundaries don't scare the right person. They reveal the wrong one. When you draw a line, when you express a standard, when you calmly say, this doesn't work for me, you're not being difficult, you're being clear. And clarity, though it might intimidate someone who's used to getting away with the bare minimum, is deeply attractive to someone who's emotionally ready. Think about it. Most people aren't looking for perfection. What we crave is consistency, authenticity, and safety. When you set boundaries, this is who I'm someone, and this is how I expect to be treated. That creates a sense of structure, and structure breeds trust. A man might not say it out loud, but he feels it. He feels the difference between a woman who adapts her boundaries to keep him and a woman who keeps her boundaries to honor herself. And it's that second kind of woman who commands long-term respect. Not because she demands it, but because she naturally inspires it. Here's the psychological truth behind it. Boundaries communicate value. They show that you recognize your time, energy, and emotional space as worthy of protection. And humans, men especially, are wired to value what is not easily accessible. When you're selective, when you don't say yes to every invitation, when you're not instantly available, it's not about playing games. It's about demonstrating that you prioritize your peace. And that's the kind of energy that makes someone stop and think, sex, if she values herself this much, maybe I should too. But here's where many people get it wrong. Boundaries are not about control. They're about communication. When you express a boundary, you're not trying to manipulate someone's behavior. You're simply defining your emotional environment. You're saying, here's what I can accept and here's what I can't. That's honesty. And honesty builds attraction that goes beyond physical chemistry. Because true intimacy isn't born from constant agreement. It's born from mutual respect. What's interesting is that when you stop trying to please everyone, you become more powerful and paradoxically more desirable. seat. There's something magnetic about someone who's willing to walk away from what doesn't align, because it signals strength. It says, if I'm not afraid to lose something that's not meant for me, that's confidence, not arrogance. And it's rare. Most people cling to comfort, but the woman who can let go radiates a kind of peace that's impossible to fake. A man who's emotionally intelligent will recognize that. He might test your boundaries at first, not to hurt you, but to understand you. But when you stand firm without being cold, when you express yourself without hostility, you communicate something powerful, emotional balance. You show him that you can love deeply and protect yourself. And that's the kind of woman who doesn't just attract attention. She inspires transformation. Because in the end, setting boundaries isn't about losing love. It's about refining it. It filters out what's fragile and leaves room for what's real. When you can hold your ground with grace, you teach others that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And the moment you start living by that truth, you stop settling for connection and start choosing alignment. There's a moment in every healthy relationship where one person stops asking, what can I do to keep them? And starts asking, what do I need to keep being myself? That shift from trying to hold on to someone to simply holding on to your identity is where attraction evolves into respect. Because while charm might spark interest, it's boundaries that sustain admiration. And when a man realizes that your world doesn't revolve around him, that your happiness, your peace, your purpose are self-sustained, something profound happens. He starts to value you differently. When you set boundaries, you're not creating distance. You're creating definition. You're saying, this is where I end and where you begin. And that clarity allows both people to show up more authentically. It's not about punishment or withholding affection. It's about creating the emotional space where real connection can breathe. Without boundaries, attraction burns fast but fades faster. It becomes infatuation without foundation. But when a woman has the courage to define her limits, she builds something much rarer, emotional gravity. That pull that keeps a man grounded, challenged, and constantly reminded that she's not just someone to win, she's someone to win. Now, let's talk about what happens when you stop apologizing for those boundaries. Because it's not enough to have them. You have to believe in them. Many people set limits, but backtrack the moment someone resists. They say no, but follow it with an explanation, a justification, an apology. But strength doesn't whisper. It stands firm in silence. You don't need to defend what's right for you. Boundaries only hold their power when they are consistent. When you mean what you say and you act on what you mean, you become predictable in the best way. Emotionally reliable, and reliability, especially in an unpredictable world, is magnetic. There's something incredibly appealing about a woman who can be kind without being a pushover, giving without being drained, loving without losing herself. That balance takes maturity. It takes self-awareness. It takes the ability to walk away not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And that's what most people confuse. Walking away isn't about rejection, it's about recognition. It's recognizing when something no longer aligns with who you're becoming. Here's the deeper truth. The men who fall for women with strong boundaries don't fall because they're trying to conquer them. They fall because they trust them. They know that her bias means something because she's not afraid to say no. They know that when she stays, it's by choice, not by fear. And that creates a love built on mutual choice, not emotional dependency. The irony is, the more self-contained you become, the more deeply you can love. because you're not giving from emptiness, you're giving from overflow. You're no longer loving from need. You're loving from wholeness. And that kind of love doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't beg to be seen, it shines. So, if there's one thing to take from this, it's this. Stop viewing boundaries as walls and start seeing them as windows. They don't block love, they filter it. Seat. They allow the right person to see your light clearly without distortion. And when you live like that, you stop trying to prove your worth. You embody it. And the moment you do, you don't just attract love, you redefine it.